Before us is item 27A. It's communication from Beyond Vision requesting approval for a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for property located at 1540 South 108th Street. I know this was discussed at the last meeting of the council 2 weeks ago. I was not present at that meeting. It was held over. I don't know if, I think our city attorney Decker has some further information on it, if you'd like to make your little presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. The applicant and I have worked together to at least come to a version of a contract I think is enforceable. It's really the committee's decision as to whether they want to approve this. Again, this is an agreement for a pilot payment only. It has nothing to do with zoning. And so the agreement would only come into play if Beyond Vision completed the purchase of the property. So this is just setting everything up for a pilot payment should it become applicable. The basic terms are it's actually a 25-year pilot, and the prior version did not have a limit, but there are some issues with creating what's called a perpetual contract. So I propose to have a 25-year limit. The applicant may have other suggestions, but there should be some way to have this contract end at some date. So just something for the committee to consider. In the process of making this agreement, there's also a proposed pilot of it's $152,327 to start. That is based upon a value of $7.5 million that is imposed today. Then that payment amount would actually decrease dollar for dollar as Beyond Vision would either utilize its parcel or potentially create outlots that are taxable. So to the portion of the tax dollars that would come in from any taxable assessed property that Beyond Vision would partition out, dollar for dollar, it would reduce that $152,000 payment. So it's probably best to explain it as with numbers here, with real numbers. So starting at that number, if there was, for example, $1 million of assessed value that would be created by creating an outlot that was taxable, then the taxable value from that property, which would be, let's see, 2.8, so it'll be $28,000 essentially is what would come out of that. And so the city would only get 40% of that total, yet the actual pilot payment would be reduced by the entirety of the tax that's coming in. So just so to clarify, at $5.4 million of assessed value, the pilot payment actually becomes zero, and the city would be receiving around $60,000 in tax revenue from the assessed properties. Everything above $5.3 million would increase that $60,000 exactly in line with whatever the tax rate is. And I'm using all 2017 figures right now. But I just want the committee to know how this payment arrangement would work, and then it's really up to the committee and ultimately the council to decide whether this is something that they want to approve. And I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitelli.
Gail, I would like to ask, first of all, the questions tonight that we have this agenda here as a communications, so which to me should never been a communication, should be put as a resolution. And I believe the Safety and Development Committee should have been informed if we were willing to sponsor the resolution in reference of the pilot, you know. But I was not informed. I mean, let's be realistic, you know. I was not informed. The other person within the committee, we were not informed that if you wish to sponsor a resolution. To me, I don't think it should ever been placed as a communications, really. We should never have this in front of us as a communication in reference of this pilot. You know, that's one major concern that I have. Why was it not placed as a resolution and sponsored, of course, by the alderman or individual alderman, whoever wished to be the sponsor on the resolution in regard to pilot? We're not talking about anything else. You know, that's one big thing that I'm facing with right now, really.
Well, Alderman Vitelli, it is a communication. It's explaining what the pilot would be, and I guess if the committee wished to move forward with this, a motion to request the city attorney to have a resolution introduced on behalf of the committee, accepting the pilot as outlined, or with any modifications that someone might want. That would be the appropriate thing. If there's no interest in having a pilot, then we simply place the communication on file. And if an individual alderman would want to introduce a resolution, they could so do. So it's up to the committee whatever action you would like to take. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Alderman May?
I had mentioned at the last meeting that I don't have a problem with Beyond Vision. In fact, I really like the mission of what they're trying to bring here. I think it's excellent. I think they belong in West Allis. I'd really like to see them here. My concern is the way that we're going about this, where we've got a communication to create a pilot agreement. Well, that doesn't really get them or us anywhere on this. What has to happen is, I think they need to put in a request to rezone the land to M1. And then they would have to, they talk about a commercial piece of property along the front and manufacturing in the back. I'd like to see a CSM produced at the same time. That would show the back portion to their petition for rezone to manufacturing and keeping that front portion as commercial. Certainly the whole idea of this pilot, I like the idea of a pilot. I don't really care for the way that it diminishes over time based on how the commercial property would develop. But I think the idea that we're going to approve this pilot agreement before we even take care of the zoning, to me, looks like it's a pay to play. And I understand that that's not the intent of this. My understanding is they're trying to put the feelers out to see if we'll accept a pilot. But to anyone else out there, it looks like a pay to play. So I really think we need to take care of the zoning issue first. We need to have some of that market analysis that we're approving through the carryovers tonight, we've talked about in the past, to see what is the best zoning along Highway 100 in this area. And again, I'd like to see this, before we agree to anything, I'd like to see the CSM that would split the the western portion off as commercial and the eastern as manufacturing. And one more point, and I like to do this every time we're here. We're talking about manufacturing. Again, manufacturing, we only have one manufacturing zone. By changing this to M1, hypothetically, Zignego could come, or any other concrete company could come forward tomorrow and say, we'll make a better offer, we're gonna rip down the building and put a concrete plant there. We need an M1 and we need an M2, and I'd really like to see that before we'd move forward with this. I'd like to see it all. I'd like to see the M1 versus the M2. I'd like to see the petition for the rezone, and again, the CSM. Thanks.
Alderman May, I just want to comment, I totally agree with you. I have no problem at all with the pilot. I think I commend Beyond Vision for coming in and offering a pilot for this. I think that's a great step forward on their part. However, I met with them this morning, and since I wasn't here for the last meeting, I want to let the rest of the council know, I am not going to support a rezoning on that parcel until such time as the two items that Alderman May stated, we change the manufacturing district, and we have a complete Highway 100 study, a completed input. I'm not going to spend tax dollars for a consultant to come in and do a study for us, and then jump out and rezone property before that study is ever in. I don't think that's a wise decision on our part. If that's the case, why have a consultant come in? So that's my thoughts on it. Like I say, I commend them for the pilot. I have no problem with the pilot, but I'm concerned about the zoning.
And Mr. Chair, and I would suggest that if this study is so important that we need to wait and hold Beyond Vision off until this study is done, well, then we should have a moratorium on all development on the Highway 100 corridor study area until this study can be completed. Well, that's absurd, what I just said. Of course, we're not going to do that. So why are we making Beyond Vision wait?
The zoning change. It's a change in the zoning, Alderman Haas, that I'm concerned about. I'm making an assumption, but I have a pretty good feel that a consultant is not going to come in and recommend a manufacturing zoning along Highway 100 in that area. It's all commercial. I mean, the history was manufacturing years ago. We had the 7-Up plant, we had Borden's Dairy there, you had Excalibur. Those uses are gone, and they've been gone for a number of years. It's turned commercial, and I don't want to see the potential of manufacturing going in there with down the road, you know, we're stuck with a manufacturing district that, as Alderman May said, a lot of heavy industrial uses could go in that, to me, wouldn't fit with the character of Highway 100 anymore. So that's my only problem with it, is the manufacturing zoning.
You know.
Otherwise, I think it's a nice use for the area.
Mr. Chair, for so many years, I think we've been washed with the commercial properties, really. We have been really promoting the, you know, many of the retailers and on and on. You know, I think we've been kind of working on that for a long time. But, you know, the fact is that, to me, at this level now, when you have, you know, 3, 4 boxes standing empty for the last couple of years, in Obo, I think is the last one, I think, that just left town. So, and they still are gonna sit there, and Pick and Save has been shut down, I mean, vacant for the last 5 years, I believe, 5, 6 years already. So, and nothing happened at this time yet, nothing happened. To me, I mean, at this point, we're gonna pay or cost money to have the study done. I mean, have a study done by a consultant. What more he can tell me what really he has in that location? Already it's been commercials, you know? I mean, the whole strip is all commercials. So we have a few industrial people there. So now if you know, Behind Vision, they'll come forward, in fairness, I mean, let's be realistic here. Those people, I mean, are needing people that they have problems with their many reasons of handicaps, people that their sight that they can see good, you know, and there's still this place, I mean, give people the opportunity really to come to West Allis, to have a decent place. The traffic won't be as great that if we get somebody else. I mean, it could happen maybe years down the road, like Alderman May said, it could be a crushing company with concrete move there, but I don't think it's gonna happen, really, in all fairness. They're not gonna move there to have a concrete cement mixer to provide road construction services and everything else. So in my estimations, really, we're gonna invest money for the study for that Highway 100 strip, I call it, but really, how much more can go there now, really, in fairness? What can really go there? So if we have I mean, to me, I call legit operations, people, they need their jobs, they wanna move to a better place. If they're gonna move to a house, they're gonna spend the money within the areas. I mean, fine, maybe there's some loss of tax revenue, but we're losing taxes right now with a lot of big boxes. They're contesting us in Madison. They are. They are. A lot of those businesses, they don't want to pay their fair share of taxes, those big boxes. And that's truth. We all know that. They've been fighting that. They got lawyers, they got throughout the country. That's a movement that's going on right now. They don't want to pay their fair share of taxes, those big boxes. I'm called First Walgreen is one of them. So that's why I'm realistic and fair. That's why I look at it. Like I mentioned last time, I don't like to play games. I don't. To me, that's genuinity and honesty. I think it means a lot. So if you don't want the place to come to West Allis, let's face it, tell them we don't want them. And that's it. But I don't like to play games. I don't.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Road?
If I can just push back a little bit on the concrete plant. 3 years ago, we had Michael's putting a concrete batch plant right by Colder, so it's not that far-fetched.
Yep. Alderman May?
I just want to be very clear. I do want Beyond Vision to come to West Allis. Absolutely.
I
I
know
think
you
they
are.
would be excellent, the jobs they would bring, everything. My first involvement in a sort of public service was when I was in 9 and 10. My mother was on the board for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. We helped, I was basically like a little page, and I'd pass things between individuals. That was my job. But So accessibility to these jobs is important. I know of a number of individuals in my own district who are visually impaired and would benefit from this, so I would like to see it. But here's the thing, our current, is it the 2030 plan, shows this being commercial property. Our plan calls for the vision of this area to be commercial, and if we're gonna change the vision for this area, that's the purpose of the market analysis that would be done through a study. I think there's also a big difference between light manufacturing and industrial and heavy manufacturing and industrial. I think if we, just by cleaning up and creating an M1 district and an M2 district language in our ordinances, I would be much more comfortable moving forward, again, with a CSM showing the split, the front part commercial, the back part, and M1 would be the light manufacturing, M2 would be the heavy manufacturing. We would purposely exclude things like concrete companies. We'd exclude heavy manufacturers like, Drop Forge and things like that were here. So again, I want to be very clear, this is not games. I would absolutely love them to come to West Allis. I actually think light industrial is a big thing right now. You go up and down I-94 from the state line up to, was it Ryan Road or Rawson where the Amazon is going? That's all light industrial. This might be a great place for light industrial in the back. But I'd like to have some market analysis to show that that is the best thing for the city on this corridor. So I hope that helps explain something. This is not against Beyond Vision. I love what they're looking at. I love what they want to put here. The pick and save property, in my opinion, would be perfect for light industrial. We'd have to have a study to show it. I just want to have a good vision of what we're doing long-term on the corridor to make sure that this fits.
Alderman May, I just want to remind the committee, it was only a couple of years ago that we rezoned that property from manufacturing to commercial to fit in with our long-range plan. For us to be jumping back and forth willy-nilly, I think is ludicrous. Either we take a stand and we say we want it to be commercial, or if we come up with a new manufacturing district, I think that's something that's open for consideration and discussion, certainly. And we've talked about it for a while. I think we're all in agreement that we need to get another manufacturing district defined in our codes. So, that's a goal, and I think we're on track to get that done this summer sometime, correct?
June 4th, it'll be on the council agenda for a public hearing.
Good.
And,
I will happily sponsor that.
and
I think we all would.
consider it done. End of May, it'll be on the plan commission.
Alderman Weigel.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to go back to TIFs in general, or excuse me, pilots in general. So in this case, what's Sam's Club paying right now? Is it like $3-something?
$280,000.
$280,000.
I believe it's in
So
dispute
that's the
right now.
total for all the taxing entities. And in the past, when we had talked about pilots, we'd only essentially talked about the city's portion. And I think it's because we're under the impression that that's really all that we could talk about. But I know that we've seen West Milwaukee, in a similar situation, insist on 100% pilot for all the taxing districts. And I was under the impression that that was the direction we were gonna be going with pilots, okay? And I understand that this may be a special case, but I honestly thought that going forward, pilots, we'd be talking about the full boat, the entire amount, okay? So it's not that I'm confused here, I just want to remind everybody that this is what we had talked about in the past, is the total amount of the taxes. And it would then be up to us whether we want to share with the other taxing districts or keep it 100% for us. I would personally be in favor of sharing with the other taxing districts because, again, I said at the last meeting, we don't charge property taxes just because we can. We do it to pay for the services that we provide, and we, I mean, all of us, all the other governmental entities in the taxing districts. The other thing I'd like to see on pilots is a COLA. If we're talking about, in this case, 25 years, what's $155,000 gonna buy in 25 years? It's not gonna buy anywhere near what we're buying now. So those are, and this has nothing to do with this particular property. I'm a big fan. I would love, I agree, we would love to have Beyond Vision in West Allis. I just think big picture, we should look at pilots holistically and protect all the other taxpayers in the room, that are at the table. that are, I'm a small business owner, we have homeowners, because that's where this money is coming from. So, I mean, am I wrong? Did we not talk about going the full boat, I'll call it the full boat pilot, you know?
I've heard that discussion, but.
Yes. I guess has not been a policy on it. I
No.
just want to remind people,
There's
that's
no
what we had talked
policy,
about.
Mr. Chairman, at a safety development committee meeting that I think you referred to, the committee did discuss generically, should we do the 40% have we traditionally done, or the 100%? And it was the consensus of the committee that we should be looking at 100%. They didn't take it to the council for a full vote, it was just sort of like, that's our guidance. Everyone has come to us since then, we've said the council's policy is apparently 100%, and Beyond Vision have to be the one that actually came forward with a proposal, and they proposed 72%, which is up to you to decide if that's acceptable. I also want to make one mention to Alderman May, is that legally, I'll let Kale clarify this, is that we can't do the rezoning and then do the pilot. That's kind of against the law, but Kale, if you would talk to that about that.
I think what he's referring to is if there was contract zoning, which is what I think Alderman
I'm
May
afraid of.
brought up. That was one of the reasons I worked with council for Beyond Vision, was because I wanted to eliminate any possibility that there would be any agreement to zone in the future or remain zoned in a particular way in the future. That has all been removed. So either way is not necessarily a legal issue, I would argue not. It's more of a practical question, I guess, in that if you want to do the rezoning first and the deal falls through, you deal with whatever comes from that. If there's disagreement in place, then Beyond Vision has the incentive to remain as the primary buyer of this property and maintain the ability to acquire it after the zoning changes. The problem is going to be, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in from a legal standpoint, because the contract that was presented does not have any obligation for rezoning in the future.
If you were to rezone it, then they wouldn't have to do a pilot. I mean, now it's zoned, and there's no need for a pilot. That's why we do it in this order now, I remember what we're talking about.
Alderman May?
So I have a quick question then. So we can, a pilot is something that's offered up to us. It's not required, correct?
Yeah.
So whether we rezone this or not, really it's up to them to present us something we say yes or no. Do we have any standing to say, no, we want the pilot to be 280,000 and it doesn't diminish based on the commercial that's built? Hypothetic, because now we're dealing for the pilot. And now there's a negotiation and an exaction going on there.
Ultimately,
Is it take it or leave it?
no. Ultimately, yes. If you don't want to accept the pilot as presented and want to counter with other options, that's something that you certainly could do. Just based on Alderman Weigel's comments, I ran the numbers quick. A full tax payment based on the $7.5 million assessed value would be around $212,000 in total revenue, of which about $84,000 would come to the city. But, yes, to answer your question.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Barzak?
I think one thing to clarify, when the 2017 tax rate, the school district was down 12%, which was kind of a fluke. There was extra money there, and that's one of the lowest taxing years, and this is what we're basing this off of.
No, that's actually why I went back 2 years, because last year was that problem.
Correct.
So it was a big dip in 2018, which I felt would have not accurately reflected the numbers, because I assume the school district will go back up for 2019. which
Okay,
is-
so it was, I wrote down 280,000, so it's, that's the last that Sam's Club paid. I wrote that down. Somebody said it was $280,000.
They probably were assessed higher than $7.5 million.
Okay, so I'm gonna use the $280,000. So technically, according to this current pilot that we have in front of us, we're gonna lose $280,000 in taxable revenue. Because what they wanna do is offer us $152,000, but build an outbuilding that'll generate, I think you said $28,000 per million, 5.4 will give us $60,000. So instead of ending up with $152,000 to the city, we end up with $60,000 to the city.
If they have $5.4 million in assessed value that they transfer, yes.
Correct, and they know, I mean, the plan's right here to put the outbuilding on there. They're not, I almost want to use Alderman Vitale's words, and he didn't say shell game, he said, I don't want to drag somebody, what's the words he used? Play games. I mean, sure, we'll give you this 152,000, but we're getting this building up like right now, so the 60,000 goes to the city. And we end up technically losing $280,000 in taxable revenue. To all entities,
To all.
correct.
Yeah, so of the $280,000, if that was the total taxes coming in, the city would receive around $112,000 of that. If $5.4 million became taxable as a part of this pilot, the city would receive a total of about $60,000, and then the other taxing entities would receive approximately 70,000 maybe, just the remaining 60%. We get 40, they get 60% approximately.
Okay. So we're out about 280, 240, give or take, that we lose on this deal. We'll go to Pick and Save. Pick and Save, is a unique situation. Burger King, Pick and Save actually renewed their lease and were continued to pay the lease there. So that property was not developable till about maybe 6 months ago.
You mean Burger King?
No, Pick and Save.
Pick and save.
Pick and Save had to continue to pay their rent.
Oh, yeah,
So they did not
that
want to
expired
unload.
about 4 years ago.
I think it was less than that, but I think it was about a year ago. And there is interest in the Pick and Save building today. Hobo just went out of business, and there is action on that property already. Big action. So just because those properties are empty doesn't mean that there's a reason they were empty as long as they were. The guy at Pick and Save, the owner of it, did not want to get rid of that because he's got a cash cow coming in. And it's the same example as the Burger King that's sitting on Greenfield Avenue. That Burger King owns the building, they own the lot, a guy owns the land underneath, and they don't want to sell because Burger King just renewed their lease in there for 4 more years in an empty building. So there's reasons some buildings are empty. So this particular offer, to me, I mean, the city of West Allis is not getting a deal here at all. To take the pilot and then put an outbuilding and have it go against the taxes just reduces it, and we end up getting $60,000 and end up losing a possible $280,000. So to me, it's just does not make any sense to go forward at this point with the pilot or anything else. And we're spending $60,000 for a study, and we just rezoned that about a year ago. Why spend the $60,000? Let's take that back. Let's take that off the table and just start rezoning stuff. Or like you said, put everything on audit. I mean, it makes no sense. It does not make sense to go rezone this when we just did it a year ago. I could not support this at the way it's introduced to us right now, to take the pilot and then put the building up, lose that revenue, and the possibility of losing over $280,000 in tax revenue, plus we could even get to 60 if a building does go up, makes no sense to me.
So Alderman Barza, if I understand you correctly, the only pilot that you would support would be 100% pilot.
I would support a pilot in the form of what they offered, but it does not get affected by the outbuilding.
Okay.
So we get the 152,000.
So any new development, we get the taxes and,
However, I would like it to be reassessed every year, and that pilot would be adjusted accordingly. That if the taxes go up, the pilot goes up. If they go down, the pilot would go down. I would like to see that, and I think Alderman Mason, and I wrote that in there, or I can't remember who said it. I think it was Alderman Weigel, that would be adjusted. So that stays. That is not going to be taken away by the shell game of the new building coming up with the 60,000, and we end up losing out on the 280 or the 152. So I think this is a terrible deal.
any other comments from any of the council?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll just get on the agenda tonight. Who
It's a communication from Beyond Vision. Any city can submit a communication to the city clerk's office, and it goes on the agenda. Only an alderman can introduce a resolution or an ordinance.
Alderman May?
So I like to give, when people come before us and they're petitioning for things, I like to give them a path forward of what that would look like, and what they're gonna have to do. It sounds like from the financial standpoint, the idea would be at least that the amount they're offering, plus the, it doesn't get reduced based on what happens to the commercial lot is what Alderman Barzak is proposing. But from a timeline perspective, you're saying by June 4th, we can have the M1 versus the M2 language. How fast could that, we could pass it that night hypothetically?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at June 4th. I would want to see a CSM to even consider that back portion being zoned for light industrial. How long does that take?
However long the applicant's consulting engineer takes.
So if they get a survey tomorrow, we're probably not going to get it tomorrow,
If
get
we
it
had
next week.
Tomorrow, we could get on the council.
They could have it
agenda.
out to us on June 4th hypothetically as well.
Could have it on in May.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could,
And again, I'm just trying to go through,
yeah, just,
and then I would think that they would have to submit the petition to rezone, right?
Yes, someone has to,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I hope someone's taking the steps down, so.
I'll watch the video.
All right. And then we'd have to complete the study. So it sounds to me like the constricting pieces in this, it's not unreasonable to get our M1 versus M2 taken care of. It's not unreasonable to ask for the CSM. It's not unreasonable for a petition to rezone. Really, the time factor that would be holding this up is getting this study done to verify what the market shows the area to need. So how fast will that take?
the proposal that's out there gives them, once they're selected, first part of September is what we are projecting
Okay.
for the final full study. That could be accelerated a month if we said, once you get all your analysis done, write up the part that affects this area, and then you can write the
Give us
rest
the
of it
report
later.
later. Just give us the summary, right?
Yeah, so that might give us a heads up, and, well, we could ask them, but I would think that possibly 30 days in advance of that. So you're talking August.
Okay, and then what I'd like to know from Beyond Vision, through the chair, of course, is what's your closing date?
I don't know yet. I have a lot of flexibility with, I have a great relationship with folks at Walmart.
Okay.
They feel very strongly about this use for this property, and that's why they chose us among the various bidders. But, yeah, we've got flexibility, so I don't know, it's gonna depend on all of this.
Okay. So it, depending on all this, means getting that M1 versus the M2. Again, I'd like to see a CSM to divide the property. I'd like to see the petition to rezone. Us getting it done by August, we could be taking this whole thing up in September. And of course, getting some sort of agreement on this pilot if that is still being offered. Correct? Did I miss any steps? Okay, thank you.
Just, if it's going to be, if Beyond Vision petitions to have it rezoned, once we split the two zonings, they have to come in with a petition, and then you have to have a public hearing on that, so that delays it a month. I mean, you gotta have a public hearing, and then we can act on it the hearing night, but there still has to be a public hearing on the rezoning request.
One more question.
That's gonna
I
take
dropped it again.
till
What-
June or July. I mean, it's gonna take about 3 weeks to get the publications published.
That's for the first changing the zoning code. But then, once you change the code, they have to petition to come in for the new M1 or whatever it is.
New M1.
And then you have to have a call for a public hearing for that.
Actually, it's a little bit longer because we're gonna have to change the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan currently has it as commercial, and the comprehensive plan takes another week or two longer in the publication timeframe.
But it sounds like that could all be done by August.
Yeah, it
Right.
could be,
So my question is, when they make the petition to rezone, how many days does the council have to act? 60?
That was the 45, but I have to look at that. It's 45, I thought, but I have to look in that.
But I would think to their benefit, they'd be, hopefully be willing to go longer than that 45 if the schedule works out. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Alderman Vitale?
Yeah, in the questions of Alderman Barzak, what did address tonight, the reference of the $280,000. Kel, I mean, can you give me, really, be able to give me some facts how really, how much totally we lose? You know, in reference to just as well about the other government entity, they will take, say, the sum of $280,000, what would benefit the entirety of the tax bill per se, you know?
Sure. So in 2018, the Sam's Club was assessed at a little over $10 million, this property was. The total tax bill that was paid was $280,000. This is still a contested case. They have sued the city for the assessed value, so there's still a case pending on this value, but they have to pay the amount up front in order to take this to court. So the city received $117,000 of the $280,000 from the taxes from 2018. Now, under this arrangement, the city would receive at least the initial payment amount, or the base amount, would be $152,000, which is been computed as the school and city portion of the 2017 tax bill. About 72% of the total tax bill of a $7.5 million property in 2017 is equal to this payment amount. So from the $152,000 payment that is proposed, any assessed value that would be put on the tax roll from the parcel or the property that's involved in this deal, dollar for the payments that would come in for property taxes would reduce the total payment. So from a taxable value of 0, which is what it would be to start, because the whole property would be tax exempt, to a taxable value of $5.4 million, meaning entities other than Beyond Vision developing property within this land area. If they reach $5.4 million, the pilot payment will have dropped dollar for dollar down to 0. The total taxes paid will have risen to $152,000 total. However, of the $152,000, the city would receive around $60,000 in actual tax revenue to the city of West Allis.
We'll be getting less money every year. We won't be getting the flat 152, because those other entities will be getting their shares then.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
So from $5.4 million going up, the city would continue to receive its normal portion of taxes related to that assessed value. There'd be no pilot payment, though, from $5.4 million up, under the current arrangement.
And we would lose the $280,000 if it was something else. That's gone.
I mean, if it was something else.
There was a church that went in there, a mega church.
Yeah, that would work. If it was a,
Amazon distribution center.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Amazon distribution center
Gotcha.
comes in there.
Gotcha.
And it's
Okay.
worth $280,000, we
Okay.
lose that.
You're talking
Now-
another commercial
Now,
entity.
what Jim said tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, he said they were one of 3 bidders. So there were 2 other people that wanted to get in there. Who those people are, but there's 2 other people that want that building, so it's not gonna sit empty. And, we're looking at throwing away to our constituents that I represent, $280,000. And I just can't do that. I know that there's an emotional thing here, and I love their vision, I love what they're doing, but $280,000 to our taxpayers, I'm sorry, I cannot let that go. And $152,000 to the city and to the school, I can't let go. So for that to disappear, to put the outbuilding on, which they're gonna do right away, because they know they can get rid of that 152 right now. We get nothing off that building, where we could've got $280,000.
Mr. Chair, the fact is, we have over 200 building within our city boundary, which they don't pay any taxes at all.
We need more?
Yeah, over 200 we have. So we just give where Goodwill used to be in Oklahoma, used to be Goodwill there before, and now is a church. So again, we're not receiving a cent from that church, because that's where it is. They're exempt. They don't pay any taxes at all. So again, I mean, I'm continue to be in full support. The fact it is that it's an opportunity for many people. They have problems with their health, whatever the reasons are. This organization provides jobs, provides that many of those people, I'm sure they're gonna spend money in West Dallas just as well. So, but at least we have someone that is giving us something. But then we got over 200 properties within our boundary, they don't pay no taxes at all. And we cannot contest that in any way. At least in this case here, we have something we can work with, they're willing to give us something, you know? And I understand the fact that we lose over $200,000, but the bottom line is, I mean, in many thought that it crossed my mind, to me, it's a good proposal, helps a lot of people that, again, I repeat myself many times, it help a lot of families, that some are married, some are not married, you know, but it really gives people hope, you know, that's why I look at it. So, I mean, I could be wrong, you know, I mean, but that's my strong feeling, really.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've discussed it, and we've heard the emotional side, we've heard the practical side. I don't know if they are willing to redo a different pilot plan, but I think in this particular case of that pilot plan, I make a motion right now to place on file.
There's a motion.
Second.
to Place the communication on file by Alderman Barzak, seconded by Alderperson Stefanski. Is there any discussion? Alderman Mayor.
Again, my big thing here, I've said it many times, is the zoning, but I want to be realistic about this as well. If we accept nothing as a pilot, the study should say this is M1, whether we get a pilot or not, right? I'm not saying make it M1. I'm saying if it's a true market analysis and it says this should be M1, and they make the petition for M1, you know, there's a good chance we may do it anyway and not have any pilot. I just want that everyone, to your point, it shouldn't matter in some ways what these numbers show. A true zoning master plan is gonna show what the zoning should be regardless of the potential user that wants to go there, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman?
So in some ways, and I agree, I see where you're going too, because the way you're going is say, and I agree with you, I'd like to see more out of the pilot, but I just wanna make sure we're careful that we're not saying, you know, we want the pilot, we'll make it M1, we're not getting the pilot, we won't make it M1. I just wanna make sure, again, this is not a negotiation for zoning, and I know you're saying that it's not, but in everyone's mind, just remember, if we say this is M1 in the end, and we don't have a pilot agreement, we get 0, because they have a right to go on that property.
Alderman Stefanski.
And until the building is sold, correct me if I'm wrong, we still get property taxes from that building. So until it's sold, we don't lose anything on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless the court case goes against us.
Well, we'll lose some.
We'll lose some.
Which it probably will. We'll lose some.
We
will.
I wanna point out to everybody that if it wasn't for the small manufacturing portion of their business, they could move into that property tomorrow, buy the property, move in there, and put their machine shop somewhere else and not have a pilot. So by placing this on file and not talking about a pilot, we could possibly be cutting off our nose,
Mr. Chairman,
spite our face.
Mr. Chairman, we actually don't have a pilot. They're offering 152. They're gonna put up a second building, and that's gonna take their pilot down the zip.
They might
We
not
really
put up a
don't
second
have a
building.
pilot.
They might not put up a second building.
What I'm saying is by putting this on file with.
They're going to.
By
You don't have a
putting this
pilot.
on file with no further action, you're putting an end to the possibility of a pilot at this point. I would suggest that you place the communication on file and request the city attorney to proceed in negotiations
With a
with
resolution.
Beyond Vision to negotiate a better pilot.
I thought that was my intent.
Okay, is
I
that your
thought,
intent?
absolutely.
Okay, you said to
Yeah.
place it on file.
Right, yeah,
I wanna
place,
just
place this on file and come back with a,
So then it's to instruct the city attorney to negotiate with Beyond Vision to come up with a pilot that's more favorable to the city, addressing the 25-year factor and the desire for at least some of the members to get a 100% pilot. And for all of the taxing bodies, that money not to go to the city. Correct?
no, no,
No, you want it all to the city. You're gonna say, I want 100% of the taxes, but the heck with the school board, the heck with the man APC? Is that what you're saying?
they offered 152,000, which is the city and the schools portion.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that.
okay,
I have a problem with it disappearing when they put up the other building.
okay. So
That's where I have an issue.
That's the issue, okay.
To me,
I wanna
that's
make
the
sure
issue.
that the city attorney understands what to negotiate, or what our intention is, what we're gonna end up.
I want
approving.
our portion of
Because I
that
don't want-
$280,000 for that 25 years to
Okay.
take care of our
With
constituents.
some type of cost of living clause in there, whether it's every year, every 2 years, every 5 years or something, some way to increase it, because we
Yes.
all know that things change in 25 years.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I also
Okay.
have a problem with the 25-year pilot. And also, I have a problem with not assessing them every year according to the agreement that it sounds like they made. I feel that it should be assessed every year.
Mr. Chair? How much detail would you like me to get into on those questions or those particulars? Because, for example, assessment, do you want it to be a number that's imposed by the assessor and then have some process to challenge that assessment later on? Because I just need to know the terms to negotiate. If we're gonna make it that, what we're gonna link the cost of living adjustment to? Just want me to take liberties to do that?
My suggestion would be that we leave that up to you and Beyond Vision to negotiate and see what you come back with, and I'm sure you'll do a reasonable job.
Very good.
If you leave up to staff, we'll work with you to come up with some alternatives, and then you can pick and choose what you
Very-
want.
Very good.
Sorry.
One thing to consider also is if this did become an M1 zoning, that the assessment would likely be different. So if you're gonna tie it to assessments, we may also be harming ourselves on that.
Values will be-
Because
The value is gonna be set by the state then.
the value will be set by the state, and there may be exemptions and things like
Yeah.
that. So if you wanna set it, if you set it to the zoning, or to it being redone, or
Yeah.
based on the M1,
You're at the mercy of the
you're,
state.
you're lowering that dollar amount as well. And again, if you want to get rid of this whole idea of the commercial portion, reducing the, I would, again, like to see a CSM. I think your best chance of getting the back portion to be manufacturing and the front portion commercial is to do it through a CSM now, designate the back, the eastern portion as your manufacturing, your western portion as your commercial. So I just don't even tie it to the commercial, like you were saying, Alderman Barzak, don't tie it to that commercial piece at all. Have that split property in there right away when you come in for your rezone with your CSM, and it'll clean things up.
And if an outbuilding gets built and it's taxable, it's taxable.
Taxable.
Yep.
That's the way it is.
And so I guess the question goes back to then, do you still want it tied to the value, the assessment on the building? Because again, if it becomes manufacturing, the assessed value will likely go down, and so will
I'm
your
sure it will go
amount.
down.
Let the city attorney negotiate that.
Mr. Chair, I would like to clarify with the communications, if we place that on file, I mean, technically, I believe City Attorney maybe can answer that. By placing it on file, means we cannot really, more or less, kind of discuss it anymore.
Well, sure we can. So this
I mean,
brings back
it's
a
gonna be
resolution.
with the resolution then, I understand that.
Another person would have to bring forth a new resolution to
Yeah.
approve the agreement.
At the next meeting, you'll discuss it.
So it
You
could
can
be
Introduce something on behalf of the Safety and
safety
Development
and
Committee.
development, that way, yes,
And
yeah.
Correct.
Because technically, to me, I mean, communication goes dead, really. Once you
Yeah,
say you
it does.
approve,
And
yeah,
that's
it goes
Just the
dead.
communication.
But communications always go down. I mean, there's nothing, it's just a communication.
Well, that's why myself, I mean, I was not too happy to see a communication tonight.
We'll get the new resolution drafted.
Really, I
sent
was
out-
not happy at all. It should have been a resolution, that way we can vote for the, for pilot program, whether we should be discuss more in details, you know? I mean, To me, it's more kind of lingering the situation here, really, in fairness. That's my opinion.
At the next council meeting, you'll have the resolution drafted. We'll get it out to you well before the council meeting, so you can go through it and see what parts you like or don't like, and then you can amend it and do what you want.
And I would suggest, Mr. Stiebel, that when you do the rezoning, and Mr. Decker, I think you're probably the one that's gonna be the most involved in it, that you get some input from the council, or at least let us know what direction you're going as far as uses in the M1 district, so that we can have a little input prior to it going to a public hearing and wasting time and changing, like to get some feedback from the committee. Maybe we have to have a safety and development committee meeting
Yeah, you'll have a draft
That
of
would
that.
be a great idea.
prior to that.
You'll have a draft within a week, and then you can schedule a meeting of just the committee to go over the M1, M2.
Perfect.
And then, at the end of this month, the plan commission can review something, and then on your June 4th, you'll have something more that,
Yeah, just
you'll
so we
have
get it
within-
before it goes to hearing.
within a week, you'll have.
Because if we want to change something, it's a lot easier to change it before it goes to hearing.
And the,
Mr. Chair?
Would it be wise to have the city assessor at the next meeting?
Why?
I don't know. It was rhetorical. Okay.
I think having Peggy there is probably, I think she has more numbers, I believe. Yeah. I'd rather have Peggy there. I get shot down. I was gonna call on you, but you had it there.
and my understanding of the distinction between the two manufacturing districts is essentially related to vibration, noise, and heavy traffic.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would think that you could look at other cities, almost, well, I shouldn't say all, but most communities have an M1 and an M2. We've got to be one of the rarities that
Yeah,
just have.
we already have something drafted that's comparable to what surrounds us in their M1, M2.
And maybe this is getting ahead of myself, but all the existing M1s that we would rezone as M2, we're gonna have to do a map change on a lot of properties.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they
On
become
a
non-conforming.
big picture concept, we'd probably rezone the northwest part of the industrial area to M2. All others to M1. Now, there'd be some select ones that we might not want to figure out how to do, and that's going to be some issues like unit drop board, those types of, we make them non-conforming uses, or what do we do with that? So that's a whole other.
I'm guessing most of those that are heavy industry that we would stay with the M1 would be more than happy to go back to the M2. Or to it.
It's not on the agenda. so
You're right.
we
I was
just
shouldn't
gonna
put
say
it
that.
on.
You're right. My apologies.
Okay, any further discussion on the communication, which is now to be placed on file, and requesting the city attorney renegotiate a pilot with Beyond Vision? Any further discussion on the motions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Carried 4-1. If there's nothing else,
Well, second time.